Morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee C. First thing is the election of the chairman. Thank you. Thank you. And that, therefore, I'm elected to chair the meeting. Item number 2 is Licensing Act 2003, an application for a street trading licence, Milford and Whitley Limited, Church Road, Milford, Godalming. Elizabeth, could you introduce this, please?
Good morning, councillors. The Licensing Subcommittee are asked to consider the street trading application of Milford and Whitley Limited. This application was received on the 29th of November for the continuing of trading in Church Road, Milford, and to bring the business in line with the council's updated street trading policy. As part of the application process, a consultation was conducted. This resulted in 2 responses, one being an objection from Surrey Police on public order grounds and one of support from Whitley Parish Council. Due to the objection being received, the application must be determined by the Licensing Subcommittee in line with our policy. Present today, we have the applicant, Mr. Dengiz, and his wife, and also PCSO Daniel Burrell from Surrey Police. The applicant has brought with him also a petition which is recorded some support for his business in the local area. Thank you for your consideration of this matter.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Dengiz, first of all, I'll just explain what is going to happen so that you know. I'm Robert Knowles. I'm a councillor in Haslemere and chairing this committee. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Councillor Reid, who is from Cranley and represents Cranley, and Councillor Darcy, who represents Busbridge, and we will make the decision. We also have officers in support. You've heard from the Environment Officer. I also am joined by a Borough Solicitor and a clerk who will note the proceedings. Have you received a copy of the report? Yes, good, okay. Are there any questions you have about the report? Just about the report, nothing else? No. Thank you very much. And also then there'll be representations from Surrey Police, which we will hear. And this is fairly formal, but we will try and be as informal as we can, but we expect everything to be honest and to tell us exactly how it is and the truth. So we will commence by asking you to make a statement as to why you're making the application, and then I will hear from the police after that. So can you explain what you propose to do and why?
Thank you.
I found the objection has no fair ground with the position of the van. There is, if you read the comments in the petition book, the antisocial behavior problem in the area has been there for years before I arrived there, and then regardless I'm gonna be there or not. And to be honest with you, the position of the van and the working hours actually helping to reduce the antisocial behavior. I've got one customer, she has been abused verbally and once physically by the kids at the bus stop. And now she says, after I started at that position, the kids were disappeared because there is always customers, always some people in the area which they don't want, and which is actually a deterrent for the people or the kids who are causing the problem there. In this case, I'm actually not a cause for antisocial behavior, but a deterrent for the crime has been happening there for years. And I've got some people who are not my customers. They came and signed the petition book and they told me I'm taking one day off, Tuesdays off in the last 4 years. and they say, oh, we usually do the dog walking in the evenings while you are here, but not on Tuesdays because they don't feel safe. She is a young girl. She said, I would like to do my dog walking while you are here because she feels much safer in that way. I admit there's a problem going on in the park, but nothing related with the position or my working hours or any other thing related with the business, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. And the hours you want to work are 5 until 11, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll now hear from the Surrey Police, and then we will ask any questions we wish after that.
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
Apologies, this was put forward by my colleague, PC Farm, but she couldn't make it today due to other commitments. We have an issue with the contributing factor towards the antisocial behaviour of the area, especially to some very vulnerable people that live very, very close to that area. Reference, they are coming to utilise the facilities. It's bringing other people to the area, and then these groups are not like 2 or 3 people. There may be up to 10 to 15 people from different areas. And unfortunately, what's happening at the moment is that we're having a lot of antisocial behaviour around there, a lot of threatening and abusive behaviour with but obviously it's a contributing factor to that, because obviously the fact they're using the facilities, they're leaving litter all over the park area, and they're using the behind the actual area as a toilets facility, which is actually straight in front of very vulnerable individuals. That is our main problem against what's going on in Southcote. It's contributing to the antisocial behaviour. We've also got concerns to reference the use of where the actual vehicle is, obviously because there's no drop curb. So you're having to actually drive across a footpath right next door to a bus stop, which would be putting pedestrians at risk. So we are concerned about, obviously, that kind of situation. So if that gets witnessed by an officer, there is an offence there. So we're concerned about the safety of pedestrians on the actual footpath, but there's no drop curb. So for us, there's not just the antisocial behaviour, but also the concern for safety of the people using the bus stop, and it's actually quite a regular bus stop to be used. But it's one of our main contributing factors to the actual antisocial behaviour. They utilise the facilities, and then literally we have problems there from about 6, 7 o'clock. And then obviously my officers are attending, and it's not dealing with 2 or 3 people, it's dealing with 15, which is unfortunately quite taken a lot of resources off. Just recently it's reduced, it has, but we've had to put a lot of resources into patrolling the area and actually trying to displace some of the actual problems going on. But recently it's been quite good. But we have got concerns now, we're coming into the summer months. It's going to be lighter evenings and more time facilities to go do so. So our main objection is antisocial behaviour, but there is the concern and reference pedestrians and the use of the actual footpath. Okay.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think if we ask any questions to the applicant first and then of the police. So have we any questions for the applicant? Councillor Reid.
Good morning. I'm looking at the map. Has everyone got a copy of the plan or the map? I wonder if the police PCSO has. Because could you point out where the bus stop is, please? Oh, sorry, I'm going to ask you people. You've applied for the van to be in front of the play area. Is that correct? On the map? Where the red rectangle is?
It is a very wide area. There is usually enough space for 7 or 8 cars there. And there is a service in the church on Wednesday nights. I can say, apart from the van, there is always one of the residents parking his van in front of my working space. And I can say it's usually enough for 7 or 8 more vehicles to be parked there, enough space.
Would you describe the area where you're parking? Is it road? Is it pavement?
Pavement.
Right.
It's a 6.5 meter wide pavement, and the the width of the vehicle is about 2.2 meters. No, 4.5 meter wide pavement, and the vehicle is about actually 2.2 wide.
I want to ask the PCSO, your PCSO, morning. Could you point out on the map, please, where the bus stop is?
It's right by the, you see where it says shelter?
It's there,
That's
is
the
it?
bus stop there. So it will go, the bus stop goes in and then it goes into the path itself. The gentleman is it's quite a wide path. And so our objective is not about obstruction, it's about getting onto the path and going across the path to where he wants to park. So, so for ourselves, the fact is it's actually there where the shelter is, that's where the actual bus stop is. The bus, well, sorry, the bus, it's like a bus parking area. So you can actually
And
park the vehicle off.
how, with estimation, how many meters would you say the van could be then away from the shelter in that space?
Well, the whole idea, but the area itself is fine. It's where he was looking in front of the pay area. My biggest concern is that's right next door to the very, very vulnerable individuals, elderly individuals. So it would be fine to park the vehicle on there. There's no question about that because there's enough facilities and it's wide enough for that. However, it's getting onto that in the first place because unfortunately, there's no drop curve to allow access onto that.
I know about the how Surrey County Council choose their bus stops and they have to have a very straight area. So how does the bus stop at the bus stop then? How does the bus get in to stop if there's no dropped curb?
There's a bus lane, there's a bus like it curves around and so it allows the bus to park in there. So it's a parking spot for the bus. So it's like a bus lane. So as you can see where it curves, you see where the big bit where he's parking, and then it goes a little bit sheltered. That's where the actual vehicle can actually park in. So it doesn't have to go on the curb or anything. It just goes into a bus lane. Shame we don't have the photo of it. Be a bit easier.
If it helps, because I drive by it regularly, there is a bus lay-by.
Yeah, that's the word. I'm trying to think of the word.
There's a bus
Sorry.
lay-by that it pulls into.
I have another question. Antisocial behaviour in the park really cannot necessarily be associated with the van.
No, correct. That's why I said it's one of the contributing factors to the antisocial behaviour because it's bringing people to that to utilise the facilities.
But is it true that the antisocial behaviour carries on when the van isn't there, on days or evenings when it isn't there?
I don't have those facility. I don't have, that's not what our problems is the fact is on a Friday and Saturday night, there's a massive increase on it where my colleagues done a lot of problem solving. One of the biggest contributing factor is the use of that facility, bringing other children to it, making it actually away from like 3 or 4 children up to like 15 kids from all different areas.
Sorry, has that been applied for?
Do you mean a dispersal order? So basically at the precise moment, the fact of what we've done is trying to problem solve to actually prevent it before we get to that stage. But that's not a long-term solution, it's a short-term solution. And that's not going to solve a problem. So it's a short-term solution. So we're looking for more of a longer term to try and actually reduce the actual antisocial behaviour. So the long-term situation is the fact is if we take away one part of where the antisocial, so it will then we'll actually be able to, trying to get my words out, so apologies, we'll be able to do a longer term solution to the antisocial behaviour. So dispersal orders only work over a short of 48 hours. It only gets rid of someone for 48 hours. It doesn't solve a problem. It just solves a problem at a short amount of time.
Sorry, I didn't mean a disposal order then. I meant where a whole, yes.
You meant the public service protection order, PSPO? Yeah.
once again, the fact that that's nothing for the police are not there to do that. I would say that's probably going to be a contributing factor if we can't prevent it from happening. So for ourselves, a piece of there is one in Godalming at this current stage. It took probably be seven to 10 years, because I was in Godalming before that, where it's all been proposed, and and it takes a long time. So it's not going to be a solution straight away for ourselves. What we're trying to do is trying to do it in the short term rather than the long term. And that can affect the other public around them, because it actually brings a certain concern to the public as well. What we've got to try and do is reduce what's going on now, rather than say what could go in the future.
I wanted to ask the gentleman, how long have you been running your burger van at this location?
I've been there since August 2019.
And your application today is because do you already have, I could perhaps ask this to Paul or someone else, but they already have a street trading license, is that correct?
So this is their first application for a street trading consent, because prior to our policy being updated last April, they didn't require one there.
Oh yeah, I remember now, thanks. Okay, so since 2019 you've been there, which is what, 2.5 years, I suppose, yeah. And would you say that, what sort of clientele, who comes to your burger van?
My clientele are the local people, and I strongly disagree on the report. It says ready source of food and drink for youth who make their purchases. The kids, they don't have any money to buy food. They are spending their money, unfortunately, for drugs, for cigarettes, and they are stealing alcohol from the shops. And I highly disagree about the litter. I can bring at least 10 witnesses after 11 o'clock, after I finish. I'm picking up all the litter which has been purchased from the van in the park and at the bus stop, the whole area, I can say that one. And my wife, she's with me, she's helping me on Fridays and Saturdays. Fridays and Saturdays, she is doing that job, because while I'm doing the cleaning inside the van, I strongly disagree with the litter caused by the van in the area. And they are sometimes buying chips from me, which is the cheapest item they can afford mostly, but they are not my customers. They are not my customers who are causing the litter or the antisocial behavior. I agree there's antisocial behavior in the area, but they are not there because the van is there. They have been there before I was there, and regardless, I'm not gonna be there.
Is there any other location within the area where you could put your van?
I used to be at Milford and Hitley Road about 6 years, I think so.
I think it was about 2014. You started up on Milford Heath Road and then moved down to Church Road 2019. But we also have another trader now who is consented to be in Milford Heath Road 1 day a week as well. So that obviously would restrict Mr. Dengis's trading.
On my old spot, there is a pavilion which is used by the cricket and football club. And one of the gentlemen in the petition book, he stated that there is always antisocial behavior by the club. He's picking up all the broken glasses, what they call the drug. They are using some type of things. He's collecting that every week, and he says there is antisocial behavior where I was, and still there is some antisocial behavior. And I don't know, were there an objection from the police for the pizza van? No, they are there now. There's no objection.
Councillor Darcy, anything else? Can I ask, do you provide bins for any rubbish that may come from your clients?
Definitely. I have to provide bin
You-
facilities
you
in
provide
front,
them.
in front of the van.
Thank you. And you stay open until 11 o'clock, 2,300 hours. Are you busy up until that point? Or is it quietened down?
Usually the club opens until 10 o'clock, and the people who use club, the local people, they are using my van after 10 o'clock. That's why I'm there until 11, or I would like to be there.
Thank you. Can I ask the police, you made reference to the driving across the footpath to get there, which is an offence. Has any warning or prosecution taken place? Not only for the applicant, for anybody else that is doing it?
Yeah, so there has been warnings to the local residents there, obviously, because it has to be witnessed to do it. So as soon as they're actually on the actual footpath and stopped, then unfortunately there's no offence, but nothing has been recorded as of yet. But they have been going to the residents to warn them, to make them aware of their conditions, to say they shouldn't be doing it. And if they do get seen, then an officer will be able to deal with that.
This may be a little strange, but you say you've got to see them. How did they get there then? It seems that if they're there, they must have driven across the footpath.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And unfortunately, but when we go to a court of law, we have to witness the actual offence happening. So obviously, the fact is that we do believe that that's going to there. That usually is more towards with double yellow lines. So they've actually gone across the double yellow lines to go and park on the footpath. So that more relates to them, but we have to witness that happening. So they have to drive on the footpath. So they're driving. So if they're not driving, technically the fact is they haven't actually done an offence. It's one of those ones which are very fine lines of what you can and can't do.
Are there other double yellow lines there?
No, there's no double yellow lines until probably where you get down to the drop curb for disabled people to make access. But obviously you wouldn't be able to use that one because there's a big light in the way, so you wouldn't be able to go through that. And also it's there for disability to make sure they get across the road safely.
Thank you. Has there been any warnings or anything given for the antisocial behaviour? Has anything been witnessed by the police or anybody been dealt with?
So yes, there's been, I think there was, the last time it happened was 10 people were coming and they've gone down the, what we call antisocial behaviour route. So they've been getting out letters to the parents and they've gone down that route, which eventually, if they carry on their behaviour, will look for more criminal behaviour orders. Hopefully, the fact is that we can actually try and resolve it this way, rather than having to go that route and actually criminalise some children that probably just need some help.
And have those letters to the parents had any effect, or is it just continuing the same?
Like I said, the fact is it has reduced significantly, but we've had to put a load of people down there. Well, not a load, but myself and a couple of my colleagues have been going down there on a regular basis, and it has reduced significantly. There's no question, but our biggest concern is we've had a lot of cold weather recently and a lot of horrible weather. So we're only coming into that time frame. So our concern is more now coming forward, coming into the lighter evenings and the warmer days.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Any further questions, colleagues? Councillor Darcy.
I'd like to ask a question of the PCSO. What I'm slightly confused about is we have this large area of pavement. What's the purpose of it if it doesn't have a drop curb to get onto it? And why is it there?
You'll have to ask Highways that, unfortunately. I completely agree with yourselves. I don't understand why it's so wide. Maybe it's potentially for bikes because it's coming onto a roundabout to make sure there's enough sufficient place for that, but there's no bike lane in there. So I can't answer that question for you because I'm not Highways and why they actually did it in the first place.
Fair enough. The other question I was going to ask was, You talk about the weather being a factor. Well, it's interesting because the van's there even in the bad weather, but that's not attracting people. It's only when the weather's good that people turn up there, which suggests to me that perhaps it's not as significant a factor as you are suggesting.
Yeah, no, the fact is that just recently, but the fact of the biggest factor is that we've been down there deterring a lot of people away. But the fact is for us, when we've actually problem solved, when it actually was when my colleague PC Farmer was down there, and there was about 15 to 20 kids down there running around with loads of chip burgers and things like that flying all over the place. It would say otherwise. But obviously the fact is that it's like with anything, the fact it is a contributing factor. I'm not saying it's the only factor towards the antisocial behaviour. A lot of it might be because there might be some local kids that are there to cause problems and not to use the facilities. But what we say is the fact is that while that van is there, it encourages other people to get there. And so for us, it's not going to be 4 or 5 people, it's more 10 to 15, because it's bringing people from different areas to actually congregate there and cause problems for the local residents there. If that makes sense.
Yes. I mean, this isn't really a fair question to ask you, and I'm sure you won't know the answer, but I'll say it anyway. It seems curious that none of the local residents have objected, given that there's all this antisocial behaviour going on.
Oh, yeah, that's a good. It's a good question. The local residents as a whole haven't rejected that. In fact, because they're concerned to put their names in lights. So it's a bit like when we've got a problem with an individual that we're looking to do a closure of their property. Is the fact is that we try to be the voice for the community and let them have their say, so they're not putting themselves at risk. So their concern is that these antisocial behaviour, there's been a lot of threats of violence, there's a lot of swearing, there's a lot of concerns, and these are very vulnerable people. So I would imagine, and the question that the answer would be was the fact that they're too scared to come forward, or they're concerned about coming forward because their names will be in lights and their concerns. And bear in mind, they're very local to around that area. The fact that they're just concerned about what could happen to them, but I can't answer that indefinitely because I'm not them.
Can I ask you a direct question on that point? What you're suggesting therefore is that you haven't received any comments from residents yourself, as you would perhaps in the way of a closure order, that you're just surmising that may be the possibility why they haven't objected in this case. Is that correct?
I'm summarising that, but obviously the fact is because I'm not the person that was directly involved. Obviously, Cat Farmer was the one, so she was the one that spoke to the residents and went and did what we call house to house around the area as a whole. But I'm summarising what's been said to me. But obviously, in fact, I can't directly say that's what's been said. But you are correct there.
Thank you, and we're grateful that you've attended today in your colleague's stead. Thank you.
You just said you can't definitely say that that's what's being said. It's a bit sort of Chinese whispery because everyone's talking about everyone else. But what strikes me is that there are two groups that have supported this. The parish council are representing the whole of the parish. They've supported it, and also the petition signed by a lot of local people. So we're at a dilemma, really. Can you explain that?
But the fact is that, that's for you to make those decisions. We can only put that towards you. But the fact, obviously, for me, my biggest concern is the fact is the safety of residents and the people around there. So our priority is to make sure that we're looking after the residents. So obviously, the fact is that there is no drop curve there. So they are putting pedestrians at risk while driving onto that footpath. And potentially putting at risk to ourselves, from ourselves to be actually prosecuted. Well, maybe not prosecuted, but there'll possibly be a ticket for that offence if seen. And also for us, the fact is that we've got to listen to the residents and try and actually deal with this antisocial. And as you say, this antisocial behaviour has gone on for a long time, and it's still going to go. And we've got to try and get some sort of solution to support the residents that are there that are vulnerable to this behaviour.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. Any more questions? My colleagues now. Would you like to make any final comments before we adjourn to consider this matter?
just pinpointing vulnerable people, but and lighter days. When the days are lighter, they are not there. And when I am there, they are not there. And I heard of one care worker while visiting one of the residents, the flats behind the park. Her wing mirror was broken by those kids, I think. And actually, in fact, I am a victim of antisocial behavior. 6th of January, after work, I was on my way to Tesco Hazelmere. By the traffic lights, I have been stopped by 2 kids, which I know them from, one from Milford, one from Farncombe, and they pour alcohol into my car, 2 bottles of alcohol, and then one of them broke my mirror because one of them is pushing the other one in a shopping trolley, which is taken from Tesco. But there is a kebab van in Hazelmere as well. It is happening about 100 meters away from the kebab van. I cannot blame the kebab van's position or working hours, which happened to me. They were there because they got a big variety of alcohol in Tesco Hazelmere. They came there and stole alcohol. The problem comes from the drug use, alcohol. I have been told the van might be a contribution to the antisocial behavior, which I don't believe so. And when I ring the police on that night, they were there about 25 minutes after. And the carer which I spoke to, she said she was watching her car has been vandalized. And when the officers arrived, she has been told she hasn't got any evidence or proof because she saw the incident while it was happening. She was looking after elderly people, but when she hasn't got the proof, nothing has been done, and she has been told by the officers she might be making agitation or something like that. What we can do, we have to, if we don't want antisocial behavior, which is caused by drug use or alcohol, or maybe more patrolling, which we should need, I think, not cutting off the businesses or innocent people, which has got nothing to do with those problems.
Thank you very much. The 3 of us will now adjourn to consider. We will have the clerk and the solicitor with us to give us any advice that we need, but they won't take part in the actual decision. It'll be the 3 of us. When we have decided, we will return and let you know the outcome. Thank you. So we'll reconvene at 11:02. We've considered the application and the points made by the police. And we will grant the application for 12 months. However, we must point out we do not condone driving on the footpath. In the event of more evidence being forthcoming, the licence can be revoked at any time, and the police have the right to appeal against this decision to the magistrates. That concludes this matter. Thank you very much. Item number 3 on the agenda is Licensing Act 2003, application for a new premises licence at Hilltop Kitchen, Coombe Farm Building, Alden's Lane, Godalming, GU 84AP. Can the applicant or his representative introduce themselves, please?
Good morning, Chairman. My name is James Rankin. I'm representing the two applicants. On my right is Alex Winch, and on his right is Sam Fidian Green.
Thank you. Are any of you the actual applicant or are you all representatives?
They are both the applicants.
Thank you very
It's
much.
the applicant company.
Right, thank you very much. We will introduce ourselves. I'm Robert Knowles. I'm chairman of this committee. I'm a councillor for Hazelmere. I'm joined by my colleagues, Ruth Reid, who is a councillor for Cranley, and Martin Darcy, who is a councillor for Bramley and a few villages around. I'm also have with me the Waverley Borough Council lawyer on my left and the Democratic Services Officer. Take notes on my right. Mr. Hughes is the licensing officer of the council. Mr. Hughes, can you introduce this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in front of you an application for a new premises licence for Hilltop Kitchens, Aldens Lane, Godalming, where 15 valid representations have been received from other persons, 2 in support and 13 in opposition, which are attached to Annex 5 of the report document. There have been no representations received from responsible authorities, although the applicant has agreed proposed conditions with Surrey Police, which is attached to Annex 4. In brief, the applicant seeks to license the premises for the sale of alcohol Monday to Wednesday 12 till 6 and Thursday to Sunday 12 till 11, with opening hours being 9 till 6 on a Monday to Wednesday and 9 till 11 Thursday and Sunday. Following the publication of the report, the applicant submitted documentation in support of their application, which was subsequently emailed to the committee members and other persons making representations. The applicant has also submitted an updated plan of the premises, which I've tabled today and handed out. Officers request that you consider the application.
Thank you. Are there any speakers in support or against?
There possibly could be from in support, but that would be down to the applicant if they want to call them.
Are there any objectors wishing to speak?
Not that I've got here. Have you got anything on Zoom, Kimberly?
Thank you. Then we will proceed. And can I just ask Mr. Rankin, you obviously have a copy of the report.
I do, thank you.
Thank you very much. Then the hearing will be as formal and relaxed as possible, and the questions the subcommittee will ask will be proportionate and relevant to the matter under consideration. The council solicitor will intervene if we exceed that. So I will ask the licensees representatives if you'd like to make a statement.
Thank you. Just to put your minds at rest, the people that are behind me and in front of me are all in support of this application. Thankfully, this isn't one of those applications where it's just me against 40 objectors. One always dreads those days. This is an easy day for me. Each and every one of these people, I've lost some because we had a slightly late start. Each and every one of these people is local. Each and every one of them speaks with the same voice. They are wholly in support of this application. And that, for this committee, and certainly in my experience, must be a refreshing change from committee rooms where the massed bands are against an application. So the background very briefly is this: they already have a license. Sam and Alex have known each other since they were 10. Sam is the chef. He knows a great deal about chefing. He started in London with Sally Clark, and then he made his way to a number of five-star restaurants. I'm sorry, a number of Michelin-starred restaurants. The highest, I think, was two-star. Paul Cullingham, who has a restaurant in Denmark, the Harwood Arms in London, a Michelin-starred restaurant as well. And he knows his way around a kitchen. Alex Winch is front of house. He has been in hospitality for some 10 years, has worked in a number of premises, both in the UK and abroad. Portland's in Fitzrovia. There was a well-starred restaurant in Perth called Wildflower, where he was the sommelier there, and more recently has been working in Salt and Smoke in a London restaurant. And then COVID happened. So two gainfully employed people suddenly found themselves at home living with their parents again. And for boys aged 32 and 28 respectively, that is a worrying prospect, and they had to find something to do. And they hit upon the idea of starting a restaurant themselves. And they had an advance on that in that Sam's father had buildings that lend themselves to the creation of the restaurant. So they applied for their restaurant license in a very modest way. So the license that they've got at the moment allows them only to sell between 12 midday and 6 o'clock in the evening. And what they're asking for this morning is a small relaxation of that so that they can open at 9 o'clock. They're still not going to be selling alcohol until midday. And then for 3 nights a week, that's Thursday, Friday and Saturday, they ask for 11 o'clock. The sort of application that this committee deals with on a regular basis for straightforward restaurants. And that's what the application is. But it is an application which has attracted some objection, slight objection. I will come to the objectors in just a moment. But can I just lay one goes to rest? I think you will have seen in the representations that the majority of them talk in terms of planning and say, well, planning permission hasn't been granted, et cetera, et cetera. The planning position, as you know, in your licensing statement of licensing policy deals with this very efficiently. They're entirely separate regimes. They fall fairly and squarely within what's called category E. And in consultation with the council's licensing officers, they have been recommended to apply for a certificate of lawful use. They've done that, and that's in the process of being processed. So I hope that that can lay safely down. The offer is an unusual one because the boys have sunk their life savings into this project. And they both are passionate about conservation, both are passionate about their carbon footprint. And they have done their very best to make sure that the restaurant that they have uses only locally sourced suppliers. So for example, the lamb and the beef comes from Sam's mother and her farm. John Murray, the butcher in Loxwood, who you may know, provides the game and the venison. Amy Lou in Godalming provides the fruit and veg. The cider comes from Garden Cider in Chiddingfold. Dunsfold Beer, or rather the Crafty Brewery in Dunsfold provides the beer. Greyfriars Vineyard and Litmus Wine in Dorking both provide the wine. And the gin comes from Van Lane in Hambledon. The wine is supplied in kegs through jugs that are made by Sam's mother. If you provide wine in kegs, you reduce your carbon CO2 output by some 80%. There's no glass to recycle on top of that. They employ local staff. These are all students that live locally. Most live between, I think it's 90% between 2.5 miles and 5 miles of the site. Many of the supporters behind me are very, very local residents, and they walk to the premises. Some of them drive, but it's a venture which started in July. They had a soft opening in June, and then they opened properly in July. And I wonder if it's best at this stage to look at the new updated plan, because that will give you an idea of the scale of it all. I don't know if you have that in front of you. I've got spare copies if you need it. So there are 2 areas. I'm going to hold this up. There's the outside area there, and then there's the enclosed, what I'm going to call the shed area, which has got some 5 tables there, and then there are 6 tables outside. And the purpose of the application is not to restrict it to the shed, but it's to allow, if possible, please, the provision of food and drink to the picnic tables, both inside and outside. It has a stunning view. I'm not sure if you have been to the site recently, but it's far removed. Yes, please. So the idea, I mean, at maximum capacity, and it's very rare that they would reach that, they would have all the tables filled and it would be only 66 covers. And then the kitchen is self-contained within the sandstone building itself, along with the WC. And can I set everybody's mind at rest? The purpose of the application isn't to open these premises 7 days a week. The purpose behind the application is to open the premises, certainly in the morning for coffee. Horsham Roasters provide the ground coffee, and that would go on from 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock. Then the lunchtime menu kicks in, and then at 7:30 in the evening, the dinner menu would kick in. And it's proposed to have only 3 days a week for the evening sessions, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But it's not every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It would be every other Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it would only be twice a month, as it were, 2 times those 3 days a month. Please. Thank you. So Alex, can you talk us through?
So that is our car park area, which is gated, but the gates are open and providing off-street car parking to all our guests. It does go slightly further, but we can see we've never had a problem with car parking, which is clearly signed to get people in there and off the road. Again, that is the side of our shed, which has been purpose-built to for the 5 tables internally, with our planter full of fresh herbs. That is the front of our unit, of our building, of Hilltop Kitchen. We have the servery open hatch with a counter we like to fill with a coffee machine, counter full of freshly baked pastries from Sam. And on that grass, we normally have up to 4 tables facing the phenomenal view to your left. Again, that's with a slight other aspects. That's looking the other way, where we'll have 2 further tables either side of the crabapple tree, and an open space where we will be doing raised beds with a kitchen garden as well there for the coming season. That is again the shed, which we have put perspex sides up for the wind. However, those would be likely to come down in the summertime alongside the door to provide open views to the guests sitting inside.
Thank you. And then just to make it clear, the maximum capacity on Thursday, Fridays and Saturday is capped at 35 because that's the capacity of the shed. And they would always want the shed as fallback in days when there's inclement weather. But that isn't to restrict them to 35. They would still like to run the tables outside on the grassed area as well, in the same way that a good public house with its garden would run them. So that essentially is the application. Ranged against it are the objections that you've read in the objection pack, which talks, or some of them talk in emotive language about music coming from the premises. The premises have not applied for any music. 2 of the objectors mistakenly believe that we've applied for music. And then 2 of them believe that music that they have heard has originated from the premises. Just to make it clear, we have not applied for any recorded music. There has never been any music played at these premises, save in the kitchen, where there is a small Bluetooth speaker that Sam has in his pocket. It's about that big, and it's for the chef so that he can listen to music whilst he prepares the food. That is the only music that has been available at these premises. One of the objectors talks in emotive language about hordes of parties being thrown at the premises in the future. He doesn't say that it's happened at the present. And then he prophesies that there will be a constant stream of heavy traffic as well as music, fireworks, and accompanying trade traffic. None of that, you can hear the laughter, none of that bears any resemblance to what actually takes place at the premises. And just to give you an example of what actually takes place, because we've done a trial run of what would happen if these premises were open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays until 11 o'clock. And so they've applied for a series of temporary events notices. They had 8 in 2021, and then they've had 5 in 2022, all till 11 o'clock. Some of them have been on consecutive weekends, and there has not been one complaint about the running of these premises. Save for a reference to music, which is an erroneous complaint because it's not our fault that music has been heard. Save for an allegation that music has been heard, there has been not one verified complaint about people jamming up the hill or the road. Now, if ever there was to be an opportunity for an objector to provide you with evidence that that is what would happen, that is what will happen if this license is granted, look please at the track record of those 13 temporary events notices, because they have not been the source of any complaint. And ranged against the objectors, you have the supporters, and you will have seen, I think, a pack of supporters letters. There are some 33 supporters letters there. And they say, we live and walk and drive in the area regularly. We love this restaurant. We think that the food is absolutely fantastic. We think that what the boys have done, employing 8 local students, is an extraordinary thing, that they should be rewarded rather than castigated for what they have done. Now, always in the back of people's minds is, well, what will happen in the future? Are they going to sell it on to some fast food chain? They're not. That's not their intention. We're dealing with an application in the here and now. And in the here and now, this is the simple application that they seek, and nothing more than that. Now, we've looked at the question of conditions. The police conditions are on page 42, and we're happy to agree to those. Insofar as other conditions, well, we're entirely in your hands, but we've suggested a number of conditions which are in the agenda papers that deal with the question of signage and training and the rest of it. One of the matters that Alex raised with me was this: well, what about the disposal of the glass bottles? That sometimes is a noise which can carry some distance. And he would be happy to sign up to any condition which prohibits the placing of glass bottles in receptors after, say, 7 o'clock in the evening. And then insofar as the future is concerned, because as I say, there's very minimal waste from these premises. When a beast is taken from the abattoir and brought to the premises, the whole animal is used. The whole venison is used, the whole chicken is used. So there's very, very little waste. And they're in the process of installing composters so that in terms of waste that would be leaving the premises, that too is minimal. They're so passionate about it that they forage locally for their wild garlic. They forage locally for the elderflower to make their cordial. They will only use UK soft drink suppliers, not foreign foreign soft drink suppliers, to reduce their carbon footprint. And just to put the whole thing into perspective, last night they had a temporary events notice. It went till 11 o'clock. It was a lunch, forgive me. There were 33 guests. Of those 33 guests, 2 tables had walked to the premises. There were 4 staff cars and there were 8 guest cars, which I hope puts the whole thing into perspective. Now, I'm conscious that I've taken this very quickly. If there's anything that I can help you with, please, would you indicate? And perhaps it's best just to leave it there and throw these two out for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, they haven't applied for music, but because of the Live Music Act, they would be, because they've got on sale of alcohol, they would be entitled to play music if they chose to.
Yes, thank you. And I was going to ask, and I will now ask my colleagues too if they have questions. I was just going to ask, because in the application, it does refer to small 20 to 40 guest pop-up evening events. Are those musical or are they just food? Alex?
Those are just for food, set menu events in the evening.
Thank you. And then the other thing, which is very obvious, because Mr. Rankin, you made reference to 2300 on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, but the application says Sunday as well.
Yes,
So
that's my error. I'm sorry. Yes,
it is for Sundays.
it is for Sunday as well. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, have you any questions, please? Councillor Darcy.
Yeah, my first question would be these temporary events. Was there alcohol available at these?
Yes, there was. It was solely to provide alcohol between the hours of 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock.
So the one last night, for example, there was alcohol. Yeah.
It was lunch yesterday. That's my error. It was lunch yesterday, but the previous ones had all been to 11 o'clock and alcohol was sold and the sky didn't fall.
Thank you. Anything further? Yes. Okay, fine. Councillor Reid, any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Rankin, for your epistle to the apostles, as it were. I hope you're happy to listen to what the questions that we have to you, but I would like to address my questions firstly to Sam and Alex. Are you in the Surrey Hills family?
Well, I was brought up on Smithwood Common outside of Cranley, and Sam was brought up locally in the village. We are looking to join the Surrey Hills group, if that is what you're referring to, which we've been referred to by Bill Bedell, and he's been trying to get us involved. So we'd like to start up for this summer. Yes, the Surrey Hills Enterprise, is that correct?
There is a big family. I'm on the Surrey Hills board, and I will declare that now. And I wanted to ask, because there are a lot of resources that can be used from them. I think you've solved the question I had about car parking. Presumably, boys to me, those are your, that is your parking area that you have shown on the photograph.
Yes, that's correct.
And would that be the area that you intend to corral cars in, that where you notice that people have had too much to drink of an evening, and they would be put or impounded in that area?
So yes, we have a agreement with Surrey Hills Taxis, who are based out of Godalming. So we always will call a taxi if anyone needs a taxi to go home using, and we always are there the next morning. So guests are always allowed to use the car park to leave overnight, which is then locked for security for those cars, and we're there the next day very early to prepare for the next lunch or dinner.
I just want to make a comment to Mr. Rankin. We're here with all your persuasive powers, and they've been very good, but we're here to look at whether or not the premises is going to be granted an alcohol license. And so my questions will then be towards that end. I know that you've explained, Mr. Rankin, all of their green credentials. I applaud that. I know all these very local people that you've recommended and that you use. Your reputation is not in question. It is the question of whether we are giving you the ability to have a licensed premises, basically. So, you know, that is the consideration, not your reputation, or which is obviously good, or your good repute. So I applaud your carbon footprint. You talked about the parking, which is excellent. Paul has answered the question about the music. So you can have music with this license if it's granted. So we're obviously thinking, you know, with two hats on here. You've had temporary events notices, which sounds as if, you know, you are adhering to all the rules and regulations. Of course, when premises close, that's not the end of, you know, the so-called nuisance that could occur. And I say could occur, not that it has occurred, presumably as yet. But I think people have written in and they're quite fearful of these events, you know, that they would hear a lot of noise because you're in a very good vantage position on the top of the hill. How would you both control the people leaving your premises, you know, if they're under the influence of a lot of alcohol, which now we're looking at a sort of a long time in the day?
So I think it's first important to clarify the finishing time of 11 o'clock. I mean, guests need to be told exactly when an event finishes, so they leave in good time, not to cause nuisance. Obviously, understanding the tax, making sure we do have a taxi kind of relationship to make sure, as I said, we can call taxis, and also understanding. Where's my third point going? The type of event being that we are currently we only offer set menus for dinners. So they are 5-course set menus with a wine list. We don't offer a bar service afterwards. There isn't that. We don't have a huge stock of spirits. It's a dining event, and that's what we're trying to promote, not a drinking venue as such. And obviously all staff are trained. So we make sure they are alcohol trained to make sure no one who is heavily under the influence are served alcohol. We go through full training procedures with the staff. And obviously any guests who are to have had too much to drink to drive will be provided a taxi for.
The highways regulations have recently been altered so that cyclists and walkers now have priority, and I expect you're aware of that. You're also aware that to access your venue is a very narrow Surrey Hills sort of Drovers Road, really. And as a Surrey Hills board member, we are very concerned about, you know, traffic and the uses that are made of these roads by people who own horses, ride horses, and pedestrians and cyclists. I know you probably will not, you know, this is not anything that is to do with your license, but it is a worry to most people in the area, that particularly, and of course the music itself, which obviously, you know, if there's a party on, you know, people having a lot to drink will probably, you know, be a little more noisy. Will you be doing anything to help? I know that you've put up notices, have you not, about your kitchen, but will there be any notices particularly about safety on the roads leaving the premises?
Can I deal with the question of the music? Because you'll know that you can't impose any condition on a license at first go restricting music. You can receive an undertaking from me that there will be no music at the premises. Now, it's not legally binding, but it's a statement of intent. And having said that that's what we're going to do, if we then in the future breach that, then I imagine that this committee will be wagging fingers at these two if they ever came before you on review. Can I also say this, that of course, pedestrians, horses, cyclists will always come into tension with drivers. In the time that I've had with the people behind me, they will, and I can call evidence to this effect, but I don't want to tire the committee. they will all say this, that COVID has had one benefit as far as they're concerned, and that is that people have been able to take ownership of this beautiful part of the country. And lanes which were purely lanes used by cars are now not. People who bought their dogs in COVID now walk their dogs. People that had never been on a bicycle for years get on their bicycle. And they walk these 3 paths and relish an area of outstanding natural beauty. And they will all say, in the conversations that I've had with them this morning, there's been a slight increase in traffic, but really not so as you'd notice. They always say, I'm a person that regularly walks to these premises. I've never had a difficulty. A lady that drives to the premise will say, well, yes, occasionally you have to pull your car over. But that's the same experience that I had when I was driving here this morning. Yes, but people drive more carefully now. I think that is one of the benefits of COVID. It's opened up an area for people to take ownership of the countryside. And I think as a result, people are much more careful. Those that walk their dogs, those that walk their children, those that walk their horses, have always got an eye out on the traffic. And I hope that is the same for drivers as well. I know that you were involved, Councillor, with Speedwatch. It may be that that's the sort of thing that could be introduced by concerned residents here. If there are cars that try and speed, it's been a very successful campaign. That's certainly a possibility. But what these two don't want to do is establish a party venue. They've had 3 private events. One was for Sam's mother for her birthday. And then there was another for a 40th. It was your mother.
Sorry.
Then there was a 40th birthday and a 50th birthday. But nobody got plastered. There was no music. There were no fireworks. Just people sitting down eating really good food.
Thank you. And I commend you for your homework you've done, Mr. Rankin. Yes, I was involved in Speedwatch in Newhurst. My final question is basically, it will be a license to serve alcohol at your premises or not? And would this alcohol be consumed with or without food? Thank you.
During the day, so there are effectively 3 services. There's the early morning service, which is the coffee from 9 o'clock until midday. And then from 12 through till the afternoon, then there's a lunchtime menu. But if you or I were walking in the area and we wanted to stop for a glass of wine, there's nothing to stop us doing that on their license as it currently is. So we would be able, you and I, to have a glass of wine without being compelled to eat food, because that's the license that you granted us previously. And certainly in the evening, we would still like the same flexibility.
Thank you. There seems to me 2 fundamental concerns from the people who have objected, and that was one you've talked about, which is noise, and the other one was the traffic element. Now, as I understand it, currently you're open in the morning, and essentially most people, would it be correct to say that most people are getting there by foot or by bicycle?
Well, we've been tremendously supported by the local Busbridge parish. So obviously having that community close by and encouraged with the encouragement of walking, there is a section of the population of our guests who do walk, which we like. I mean, it's what we're enjoying, what we like seeing. But there is also a small portion of guests who walk. I'd probably say it's a 60-40 split in the morning between walking and driving, 40 being driving. And that goes up slightly in the afternoon to probably the other way, 60-40 for drivers coming for lunch.
Right. So I suppose the concern they would have now is that you've been closing at 6 generally. and that therefore it's usually light. So this is introducing an element of, it's going to be after dark, so there'll be far fewer people. I know people aren't going to want to walk there probably, unless they're very local. But even then, the path and the, you know, in the dark it's not great trying to walk in the dark. So I would imagine most people would be driving in that case. So there is going to be a fundamental shift from a sort of 60-40, 50-50, whatever it is, towards much more 90% driving, possibly.
Well, using your temporary events notices as an example, an illustration, what have you seen? You're able to sell alcohol until 11 o'clock. You put on your 5-course dinner. How do the majority of people come? Do they still come on foot, or is it cars? Is it as much as 90%?
I would say 80% of the people drive. There's 20% would walk. Yesterday, for example, the lunch, like we said, there was 4 staff cars, 8 cars for the guests, and 2 of the tables out of 5 had walked there.
All right, well, let's look at it this way. Let's assume that 100%, to take an extreme example, 100% of the people come by car. Generally, are people booking tables of 4s or tables of 2s?
Anything from 4 to 8. And generally there are 2s, and it's a low volume event with a maximum of 40 guests in our shed.
All right, but let's take it this way then. Let's assume 4 per car into 40. That's 10 car movements. 10 movements there and 10 movements back. And then there are the staff cars as well. So maximum, we're talking in terms of 14 cars. And you have a car park that has a capacity of 40 cars there. Does that, in a roundabout way, answer your question, Councillor?
Well, yes, I mean, it's helpful, because I was going to ask the average number of customers that you were getting in a day, and you've already told me how many you think arrived by car, but what would you say was the average number of customers you got?
So we generally see a 45 cover lunch. Oh no, that's like what we found on average over the whole year last year. In the mornings, we don't have a cover number as it's not bookable. We have a walk-in service. We would serve, I'd say, up to 80 coffees in the morning. That's always the best way of gauging how many guests you're coming in, because most guests will be going for coffee or tea. That was hot drinks, sorry, hot beverages. And then in the afternoon, I think on average, we found around 25 to 30 guests between 3:30 and 6 o'clock.
So that's what you have at the moment. The license, of course, that we're applying for is simply for the extension from 6 o'clock until 11 o'clock. And what the committee will be examining is the impact of that.
Yes, correct. I mean, obviously we talked about the road being very narrow, it's windy, it's steep, it's single track. It's not an ideal, I'm sure you would prefer to have a slightly wider road to get to your place. It's not ideal for driving up there, and especially not after dark. That would be a concern I would have. It's a very dark area. There's, you know, the street lights don't exist, and therefore, in terms of safety, there is much more of a serious element to it if we're talking post the sun setting, particularly where if you have people walking there, because there's no pavements as such, or cycling or whatever. So I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is that this introduces a new element which is slightly of some concern, I think, because of the nature of the road, really. So what would you think what are the possibilities, if you like, for reducing that possible element of safety issue?
I'm conscious, of course, that the police were consulted on the application. And I'm conscious also, of course, that they're your major source of evidence on a question of crime and disorder. And I'm conscious also that no licensing officer has put in a representation. And I'm also conscious of the fact that your statement of licensing policy specifically identifies that public safety is public safety at the venue, not some miles down the road or hundreds of yards down the road. So it's a concentration of how is the public who were at the premises, how are they being protected? What's their public safety issue, and is that being addressed? These two gentlemen are more than aware that there is local feeling that is opposed to the application. And behind me are those that will say, quite honestly, what is identified in those letters of objection is not the reality. The reality is, yes, we do have to pull over from time to time. But to say that this is an area which presents as some danger area is incorrect. It isn't the reality.
I mean, I was just thinking on the lines of whether you would put in your publications, your marketing, that we encourage people to arrive by Uber or to arrive by bicycle or something like that, just to get the message across that you, because you say you'll have green credentials, you're very keen about carbon footprint reduction. So all of those things would go towards that as well. And I think it would just alleviate some of the local people's concerns. That's purely what I was thinking.
That's a very good idea, if I may say so. You, I think, on your website have been promoting the premises as an area to walk to and to cycle to.
Within our social media channels so far, and we're currently developing a website with travel information included on the website. So I think we could certainly take those points on for the website design and for confirmation emails sent to every guest for evening events, because I do agree with you.
Thank you very much. I think the mention of Uber, other companies are available, we have to say, as they would say on the BBC. Thank you. Well, we will shortly adjourn to consider this. Is there any other points that you would like to make?
No, I'm conscious of the fact I have an extremely experienced committee. Good points don't become better by repeating them.
Thank you very much. In that case, we will adjourn and return shortly with the decision of the committee.
Chairman, could I just check that there's no objectors on Zoom that want to make comment? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we resume at 11:56. Thank you, Mr. Rankin, for a very clear presentation. I'm very grateful for that. Permission is granted as per the application. We accept your offer of a condition for the disposal of the glass until 7 o'clock in the evening. You will receive the decision in writing within 7 days. I must just point out that the planning, as you said, is quite separate, and that may be rather strange. I always find that it is, but this committee has only considered the licensing issues, and you must continue to wait for your planning application to be dealt with by that department.
Can I thank you on behalf of both of these two and everybody for the obvious care that you've taken? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Could
you.
I also say, I'd encourage you to join the Surrey Hills.
Thank you. That brings to an end this meeting of the committee. Order.